My older brother won the lottery and proposed to my wife, who accepted. I kept my mouth shut until 7 months later when she discovered why I didn't say anything. There are few things that can bring joy to a divorced man, and one of them is receiving a message from your ex lamenting leaving you. To add to that, she had the audacity to be upset with me for not telling her about the warning signs of my brother, even though, to be honest, I only knew one specific sign that I didn't share with her. I waited for them, and I couldn't feel bad for what they did to me. Didn't she promise my brother to be there in sickness and in health? Well, she can stay with him, but honestly, if she couldn't even uphold our marriage vows, why would I expect her to change now? Honestly, this post is just to ask ironically if I'm wrong for not feeling any pity when their foolish actions led to stupid results. Maybe you see me as someone lacking empathy, but deep down, I know I am 100% right. Besides, should I help her now that she's in a bind? She wouldn't be in that situation if she hadn't left me for my brother in front of everyone. I will never forget that moment, but I have to tell you about it so you know what I'm talking about. 7 months ago, my brother was bragging about how now that he had money, he had power. He believed he could get anything he wanted, even my wife. At that moment, we were with the guys, and we laughed at his joke. I told Kurt he was dreaming. My wife was loyal. Then he bet $200 that he could steal her away from me. He was 110% sure she would laugh in his face, thinking he was a clown because he isn't a very serious guy. I wouldn't let her go for that fool. Yes, my brother had recently won the lottery and had a lot of money, but our love meant more than that. Not only did that $200 prove he was naive, but it also showed that my wife at that moment wasn't worth anything. That day, I learned to never say never because everyone has a price. Want to know what my wife's price was? Just a shopping cart. It didn't take him a moment to promise her the world if she left me. He told her he was serious and that he could take care of the divorce. She would live a life of luxury and have everything she wanted. To prove he was serious, he paid for a $3,000 wish list on her Amazon account right there. I was speechless watching that horror show. How could my wife sell herself for a measly $3,000? Of course, I couldn't just pull $3,000 out of thin air. I needed to work very hard for that kind of money, while for my brother, it was a small amount with his recent prize. That same night, I wanted to surprise her with great news about our future, but I was robbed of the chance when she told me about this. We had a conversation, and she couldn't look me in the eye. She laughed and said my brother was joking, that sometimes he was a clown. I told her to cancel her order and cut off communication with him. She mocked me and told me not to control her. If she wanted, she would leave me for my brother. She told me not to control her because she could leave me and be with a man who treated her better. That night I went to sleep in the extra room of the house while she locked herself in hers, not saying a word. The next morning she was gone, and even though I sent messages and tried calling her, she never replied. A few days later, I woke up and went to breakfast, only to find breakfast prepared and divorce papers on the table. I had to make a coffee to read them properly because I was still half asleep, and those papers woke me up pretty effectively. She really was leaving me for my brother. The worst part is that my brother messaged me a few days later, demanding the $200 because he really won that stupid bet. I finally signed the divorce papers because it made no sense to stay married to a woman like that. If it was money she needed to leave me, well, let her go. Besides, I knew they would be miserable in their marriage. She had no idea what she was getting into. My brother hid the truth very well. And who was I to tell her? I didn't say anything to my wife. I preferred she found out for herself. And when I signed the divorce, I smiled because I knew disaster was coming. My brother was spending money like crazy without a plan, and soon he'd be broke, and she would come running back. But not in a million years would I take her back. 7 months later, I had recovered from my divorce, and my life couldn't be better. I finally overcame the humiliation and focused on my business. The day she left, I wanted to tell her that I had secured an investor and that things were going to change. The money would help us expand and grow. Unfortunately for her, she was never there for my successes. Now she is in panic, sending messages asking why I didn't warn her about who my brother really was. When we divorced, she said that if I ever loved her, I would have stopped her from making the worst mistake of her life. She didn't give me many details, but it seems things have gone wrong and she is trying to leave him, but he's making it hard for her, which frightens her. I didn't tell her that my brother hadn't been the same since our parents died. They had him under control for years, but that made his life horrible. He had no prospects, and many people, including my wife, saw him as a loser. The secret about my brother is simple. He suffers from a mental illness that doesn't make him a very functional person. I was sure that money would worsen this, especially if he didn't take his medication. My parents ensured he took it, but since they passed, there's no way to know. Not many people know about the illness because it's not something people discuss. If he stays medicated, he can pass as a healthy person, even though he has some issues that make everyone see him as a loser. So my parents always tried to hide it to avoid stigmatizing him, and maybe in another post I'll share more details about it. Update 1, I had an unexpected visitor at my house, and it wasn't rats or cockroaches, which I think would have been a more pleasant visit. I don't even know how she found out where I live, considering I moved a month ago and bought a new house. My business has improved a lot since she left. I won't say I'm a millionaire, but my income has tripled since then, and I managed to buy a house with the bank's help. The fact that I don't have to pay my ex-wife, who has remarried, also helps a lot. Yesterday, she showed up at my door and refused to leave without talking to me. She sat in the heat for hours, and in the end, I went out to sit on my porch and drink iced tea, and there she was. She had a lot to say, and probably a lot of thirst, but I had prepared that tea just for myself because it was hot, and I wasn't willing to share it. The summary of what she had to say is this. She was very regretful for leaving me and realized that she rushed into leaving. Rushed must be the euphemism for what she really did. She said we had a lot of problems in our marriage and that the fight over the Amazon shopping cart escalated too far. She also told me that the day she left home, she went with my brother, and that was the first night they spent together. After ruining things with me, she moved on with the divorce, and even though she felt bad, she consoled herself with the idea she would be well taken care of. I listened to this while drinking my tea and slurping, but the marriage with my brother wasn't what she expected. Things started to come to light over time. You probably know what I mean. She said he was sweet one moment and then unbearable the next. She couldn't understand it, but she tried her hardest to make him happy. Then one day he had an unforgettable outburst that showed her a new side of him, a new side that terrified my ex. The little detail that only his immediate family knew. I knew that side of him. I had experienced it before. It was Kurt's other personality, one he called Charlie. He had been diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder since he was 17. My parents had monitored his health for a long time, making sure he took his medication and followed healthy patterns like sleeping enough. But since they died, surely no one has checked on him. He might have followed his routine as best as he could, but the money, my ex-wife, and all his new life surely led him down a path of chaos. To help you understand, on a bad day, Kurt could wake up one morning with a completely different personality and do things he would never normally do. A few hours later, he'd be back to normal, not remembering anything that had happened. The problem is that that personality called Charlie did pretty bad things to the point that he got expelled from high school. When that happened, my parents took him to a specialist, and that's when he was diagnosed with this illness. It took many years, but therapy and some medications helped regulate him and minimize his episodes. They still happened now and then, but at least in recent times, he had managed to stabilize, and he hadn't had episodes in our old town. People found out and saw him as a weirdo that needed to be locked up. They were very hostile toward my brother, so we ended up moving. When he wanted to marry my ex-wife, he was pretty sure Charlie was in control. But I knew all this would bring out that part of him again. Anything that can alter him is a trigger for his illness, and as I said, a lot happened in such a short time that he surely started to lose control. Winning $2 million or finding a wife aren't the things Kurt needed so fast. But that's what he got. Now my ex-wife has discovered the secret and is in a dilemma. Either she stays with him and tries to help him improve, or she asks for an annulment since my brother didn't tell her about his condition. But both situations pose problems for my ex-wife. First, she doesn't want to stay with him because he terrifies her, and second, a dissolution of the marriage implies that they were never married, which also affects the money. Good thing that's not my problem since she's not my wife anymore, and I'm not a stakeholder. I just listened to her until my tea was finished. Then I went inside my house because it was already dark, and I turned off the lights on my porch. I have a business, but I'm not made of gold. The next morning, my ex-wife wasn't there. I was worried. I live in an area where many say they've seen UFOs. I've never seen one, but I wonder if they took her. If they did, they should return her soon. They wouldn't have left her in the middle of nowhere. They would have brought her back just a few streets away. People don't like my humor because I should take things seriously, like my brother's illness. Well, yes, but my brother's illness doesn't give him the right to do whatever he wants, and my ex-wife didn't have the right to leave me for money. So, yes, I'm going to take it humorously. What would be the alternative? Crying through my post. And to those who said I shouldn't take it lightly regarding UFOs, well, I don't know what to tell them. Update 2. The jokes write themselves when it comes to my brother and his wife. They are both a joke. They are very funny people right now. Everything I'm about to tell you is information I learned against my will. A couple of nights after my ex's visit, I was buying some snacks in a store when my brother confronted me, furious. He publicly accused me of conspiring with his wife because he heard that she went to my house. I still don't understand how he found out, but let's just say it was sent out onto the street. A few days later, I learned that they were indeed divorcing, thanks to her, which was a good move, and he had thrown her out of his house. Apparently, she disagreed with being thrown out, so she decided to initiate a smear campaign against him, telling people he was crazy and that he had a split personality. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with people asking about my brother. In the end, I had to turn it off. Someone who called said they were going to his house to see him and then would tell me how things went, good or bad. When I got to his house, there were bottles everywhere, and he was passed out on the sofa. No, alcohol doesn't help his condition. The place smelled horrible, and it looked like he had been surviving on takeout for days. I woke him up and told him to go take a shower. He was dazed, but he listened. Then I cleaned what I could and made him a sandwich with what little I found in the fridge. When he finished showering, he joined me in the kitchen, and we talked. The truth was that his life was practically ruined. If she went ahead with the divorce, he would have nothing left because there wasn't much left to split, not even after the auction of all the things my brother had bought. My ex-wife also discovered that he had lied about his illness and had just been a pig with her. You know, even if you dress a pig in silk, a pig stays a pig. She could have stayed with someone who treated her well instead of marrying someone for money that she barely knew. Yes, well, you get what you pay for. In my ex-wife's case, she received more than what she paid. I love how everything falls back into place. My brother returned to being a broke idiot, someone who has to work to survive, while I can say the same about my ex-wife, word for word. Taking shortcuts in life never leads to anything good, and these two people who were once in my life learned that the hard way with a karma example. And do you want to know the best part? At the end of the divorce, they said some things, and don't ask me how I know, but I do. My ex screamed at my brother that she could shove several personalities in his head if he got too close, and my brother yelled back that even his personalities thought she was a gold digger. It's been satisfying. Not at all. I couldn't be there listening to them scream and call each other names. I wish I could have been there sitting, watching the lawyers' faces while I made all the noise possible. I know it would have irritated them, but it would have provided a much better show. And for those asking what kind of car I bought my brother, it doesn't matter anymore. I sold it and got a good price above what I paid. So, my joke of dating his wife didn't cost me anything. In fact, I got paid for doing it. How sweet it feels to return this to my brother. Update 3. My brother used a mental illness to avoid facing his problems, diminishing the struggles of people who truly suffer from such an illness or any other, which is a serious matter. But fate wanted him to have two personalities, and in this case, it's amusing for everyone but him. During the day, he's a poor man because karma has left him in misery without schooling, without knowing how to manage money, and without an ounce of intelligence to survive. Meanwhile, at night, he remains the same poor man, but with the difference that he adopts the personality of a security guard in a shopping mall. I think that is the most dominant personality he has, because he has even adopted the belly from eating so much fast food, and that trait has also manifested in the personality he has during the day. When I say poor, I don't mean financially because they must pay him in that job. I mean he's poor in mind, ambition, and anything a person should have. Although the money he makes can't be much since it's a job he got without even finishing high school. I know what you're thinking. It's time to pull a prank on him at work. But even though my days of pranks and revenge are over, there's still the little detail that he works when the stores are closed. He doesn't let people enter during that time. Although if it weren't illegal to sneak in, I think I would find a way to give him the scare of his life. It must be terrifying walking those dark halls at night, especially in an area where there have been UFO sightings. If you know that they've taken your ex-wife, that would be the best prank. He encounters aliens shopping at night. My ex-wife never wanted to talk about that, but maybe it's because she is busy with more important things. It must be hard to explain if they used probes, you know where. It's better to act like that. Night she just returned home and nothing more than the reality we all know here on Reddit because we are a bit conspiracy-minded. It has also been tough for her regarding employment, one that can pay for her Amazon wish list. There are few jobs that can afford to pay $3,000 all at once. While we were still married, she had a job. I wouldn't call it the American dream, but it was a job. But she quit when she thought my brother's money would solve her entire life. As far as I know, she is still figuring out how to sort out her life at my ex-in-law's house, because let's not even talk about working. I know with this detail, you already know who has been leaking information. I know many here don't approve of in-laws in general, but I think mine deserve a chance. She couldn't even look them in the eye to tell them why she was leaving me and going with my brother. She just preferred the technique of saying nothing. So I was the one who had to talk to them, and when I told them, my father-in-law yelled, "That bitch did what?" And the word wasn't exactly bitch, but I know moderation here bans easily. Then they called her in front of me and yelled at her for 15 uninterrupted minutes. And if what I said before that call was too much for your heart, I don't know if you want to keep reading. They said that giving yourself to another man for an Amazon shopping cart is not proper for a woman who, instead of using her backside for that, should have moved her ass to find a better job and buy it herself. And that went on for 15 minutes until her mother told her she would come back on her knees after she finished selling herself for money. Maybe she did come back on her knees, or maybe she didn't. But she did come back asking for forgiveness. And that's how they let her stay with them while she sorted out her eternal job and housing situation.